Today we're talking about enmeshment and the relational stresses that arise when someone has enmeshment as their primary kind of strategy for connection and achieving safety. There's a particular type of stress that arises when you're in a relationship with someone that worships you, someone that is like overly attached. People oftentimes use the term desperate or needy or clingy, and codependence is a phrase that's thrown around a lot. I feel like we went through this period of time where codependence was just a word that rarely used outside of kind of psychological circles or therapeutic environments. And I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, it started entering the mainstream. And then, of course, social media picks it up. And then there's pop psychology books and all this. And so it kind of goes through this phase where it's trying to explain to people, say, hey, we've got this term, it's called codependency. And this strategy, they don't call it a strategy, but they'll usually paint it as like a character flaw. But this thing that you're doing is the explanation about why your relationships aren't working, why you're not satisfied in relationships, why you're not satisfied with yourself. And so this term gets thrown around a lot. And then, of course, it has this stigma attached to it. And then there's a bunch of people that are hurting, going through their pain, unresolved trauma and attachment wounds, usually kind of more on the anxious side of the attachment spectrum. And this stigma, when they hear this stigma attached to the relationship, they have negative emotions attached to it. They're just like, oh, that doesn't feel good. I feel shame. I feel blamed. I feel like I'm the cause of the problem. I feel I'm a failure. There's a whole bunch of them that come out. And then, of course, the system doesn't like that. Doesn't like negative emotions. Negative emotions create a compulsion or a motivation to get away from this thing. So then you get these people and they'll turn on the camera and they'll say, it's not codependency. You're not codependent. It's wrong of people to attach this label to you. You're just expecting, you're a healthy person that loves a lot, or you're empathic or empathetic or caring or whatever. You're fine. Basically, that's it. It's like you're fine. And this thing that you're doing in the relationship is totally normal and natural and healthy because here's a list of justifications. We're social primates, or it's natural to want love. It's natural to want caring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they do all this to basically say, codependency is not the issue. Don't focus on codependency. Focus on the other person. They're putting you into an anxious state. They're not showing up in the way that you need or that a normal, healthy person needs. You get the picture. And you can honestly tell that my thoughts about this are not exactly along those lines. I am that person. I was that person. I was that person. I was deeply in the anxious side of the spectrum. I was all the spectrum of insecure attachment, but anxious is probably the strongest demonstration. I read Codependency to know more. I didn't know what the word meant. People started introducing it to me and saying, well, you're just super codependent, of course, with a character flaw. I didn't like the idea of being a character flaw or having a character flaw. I hated the idea that this partnership that I cared about so much, I literally built my whole life around it, was crumbling. And I had spent all this time blaming the other person. And then people show up with this codependency thing, which brings the agency and blame back to myself. And so then I go through this whole wave of self-hatred and shame, which is pretty normal. And I don't like that, right? So it's like, get this off of me. So I'm hoping by this point, I've resonated with at least some of the people listening to this. You're like, that's me in some way, or someone, at least maybe someone I know, or maybe my partner. This is really standard dynamics. There's a whole bunch of things mixed in there. There's this, unresolved shame, and then the shame gets activated by a therapeutic label, and the label comes in and it explains things for a little while, but I don't like where that leads because where that leads comes back to the finger pointing at me, and then I have to hate myself and all of this is wrapped up in attachment trauma. And I used the word enmeshment earlier. Okay, what's the connection between codependence and enmeshment? Well, kind of like from a technical definition, honestly, I think they're very intermingled, and I'll use codependency and enmeshment very similarly. But I think from the technical definition side, they'll say codependence is the behavioral strategy that you engage in so that you can achieve safety through an external person. And sometimes that behavior is about saving them or providing for them or performing for their approval and validation. But there's still a general boundary line between me and them. And that's kind of the main issue or the main difference. Is that codependency is that it is a strategy for achieving safety through external nexus of control, their approval of me, their acceptance of me. But I do still have a distinction between me and them. Now, enmeshment is all of that plus the removal of the distinction bit. It is a strategy for achieving safety through an external, but the distinction between me and them is either hazy or removed altogether. And the thing that is me goes away in favor of a thing that is we. And there's a dead giveaway for people that are enmeshed because of the language that they use in reference to the relationship. You will rarely ever hear them say I or me. Almost every description of their life or feelings or thought or whatever is we. We this, we this, we this. We're this way, we're that way. We do this thing, we do that thing. It's usually a clear sign that there's some kind of enmeshment going on. So there's reasons for this strategy, and you can see how they're so adjacent, at least in my mind. If there's a more clear distinction, leave in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But the way I see it is that codependency is oftentimes oriented around, I need you to be okay so that I can be okay. Of course, enmeshment's the same way. Both of these will often have a flavor of your opinion of me is far more important and has more weight than my opinion of me. So that's also another dead giveaway once you start seeing these things show up in real life, is that you put them in a room alone with just their numbing agents and safety stuff, and there's self-assessment and self-talk might actually be very high. It might be, well, I'm intelligent and I'm capable and I'm clever and I've solved all these problems and I've done all these amazing things in my life and I've got a good job and I make decent money and I'm not in debt and I'm not a drug dealer or drug addict or blah, 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 right? They're going to have this whole long list of positive traits, which in isolation is totally fine. And you'll see this because many people will step into that isolated state when they face major relational ruptures. Connected? So in isolation, their self-image is actually quite high, quite positive. And so they'll hear all this stuff. It's like, well, you need more self-love or you need better self-talk or daily affirmations or whatever. And that person will be sitting there being like, this doesn't resonate or it doesn't work because my assessment of myself is actually quite high. Except you bring another person into the equation. Now there's another person in that room. And suddenly, if that other person has an opinion that's negative, like, I don't like your haircut, or I don't think you're attractive, or you've put on weight, or your fashion is deplorable, or you don't make enough money, your job isn't prestigious enough, whatever, right? They come in with some kind of negative critique. Well, now suddenly this person folds. Their self-image just completely goes flat or is non-existent. I lived this one. And it took me a long time to figure that one out because no one was guiding me through this dynamic, is that in isolation, in the big house by myself, I would go around, do things and solve problems and rewire electrical panels and, write amazing software and cook amazing meals and garden an amazing yard and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I can do all these things. Like, I have tremendous capabilities. I know I'm a good guy. I know I'm a good catch, blah, 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 blah. But then someone else walks in the room and all that goes out the window. It's not that it goes out the window. It's that what I realized is that the importance of it, the weight that it had on my nervous system was so insignificant compared to the other person's opinion that it might as well have just not existed. And so no person, my self-image is great. Person comes in the room, my self-image is actually still great, but the importance of it is basically a flat line. And they can come in with one criticism. I don't like where you put the couch in the room. And I mean, this is super cringe. Let's move it right now. Like, my nervous system would jump into immediate alert. You have a problem with me. Let's solve that problem right now. I'll put the couch anywhere you want. What do you want? You want it here? You want it there? Hey, I'll fucking disassemble the television and tear it off the wall and I'll put it in a place that you'll be happy with. This is a manifestation of deep insecurity and low self-worth. Because my self-worth is high only when they're not here. But if they come here, the number value of my self-worth is high, but the importance of it, like the multiplier, is super low. My self-worth is a 10, but the value of it is only a 1. So it's 10 times 1 equals 10. Their worth or value or assessment of me is a 3, but it's multiplied by 20,000. So the importance of their opinion is 60,000 compared to my 3 or 10. Which one wins? Duh. Right? That's what it felt like. And I realized that this was creating a tremendous stress in my life. And I eventually came to see how all this stress and anxiety and depression and self-hatred and all the negative self-talk and everything else was being driven by this one core dynamic, is that I could only feel decent in isolation. And even then, my self-worth is degrading even in isolation because I've got all these moments outside of isolation that were so profoundly negative. And of course, then there's more self-doubt, more lower self-worth. From that side begins to infuse this side, and even my own assessment of myself begins to degrade over time. And then I'm sitting here being like, wow, I'm such a loser that the only way I can not be freaking out is by sitting in this room alone all day long, every day. And then COVID comes, and it's kind of like, what other option do I have? But oddly enough, for many people that were using isolation as a primary strategy to avoid this particular stress, COVID was a godsend for them. Because then they're like, woo, now I literally have an entire systemic reinforcement that I should be isolated and stay away from all that relational stress. And no one's going to call me weird because of it. I just get to sit here and numb out all day. I play my video games and eat junk food and kind of do whatever I want, and no one's going to be judging me. No one's going to be bringing criticism. No one's going to be bringing any of that stuff. I go to escape. COVID was like a massive escape for a large number of people with this kind of isolation strategy. At least that's what I saw. So what are we doing here? What is this all about? We've got this codependent idea that I'm deriving my safety from external validation. And then we got this enmeshment idea that as soon as someone shows up, I want to basically blend with them. I want to enmesh with them so that we become one, so that I can now have safety. And my safety is that I'm a part of a thing. I'm a part of a unit. And this unit accepts me to the inner circles. This unit accepts me as a blended entity, and that means I'm safe. Okay, where does that come from? Where do any of these come from? Well, let's look at a comment that kind of showed up on the channel a while back, and I'm going to paraphrase it because it's representative of a great number of comments. And in this comment, it said, I had this boyfriend one time that made me his entire world, and it was suffocating. My hobbies became his hobbies. My friends became his friends, etc., etc. Other ways this will show up is I was here in this relationship and I liked that person, but it was like they were always looking at me. They were always watching, and they were watching for any sign that I might give them that I like something or don't like something. And the moment they would see something I liked, they would grab it and just amp it up to 20. And at the moment they saw something I didn't like, they would eradicate it from their life. They would eradicate it from everything around us. And again, I used to be this guy. That's literally my primary strategy when I was married many years ago, is that I had this running subconscious tally in my list of the things that were like delight and displeasure for my partner, my ex-wife, and I would burn all of my life energy corralling reality around us to make sure she got the delightful moments and none of the displeasurable moments. When she was in a positive, delightful state, I got to feel safe. I got to feel happy. I got to feel good about myself. I'm like, I did this thing. Even if she doesn't thank me for it, I know I did it, right? I am the engineer that brought about all this. I'm the one that brought this party together. I'm the one that brought the meal together. I'm the one that brought this whatever together. And of course, that's tiring. That involves spending a lot of energy, a lot of internal energy. And the system gets tired sometimes. And when the system will get tired, what happens? You retreat. You need to save energy. Well, you retreat. What are we doing now? We're not performing. We stop being the dancing monkey. And the internal belief system, as soon as you retreat, in order to recoup your energy, the internal belief system is, I'm not performing. And if I'm not performing, I'm not going to get their delight. They're going to fall back from this edge of dopamine-driven pleasure, and they're going to come into a sad space. And in that sad space, I'm not okay. I'm not safe. I absolutely cannot tolerate the idea that they're going to be in an unhappy state. Because if they're in an unhappy state, they might reject me. Rejection, they'll move away. Now I'm alone. Oh, when they move away, the entire tribe is going to reject me. So now I'm rejected, abandoned, and I'm excommunicated from the tribe. Now I'm alone on the plains of the Serengeti 100,000 years ago, and I'm going to be eaten by a leopard. Rejection equals death. That's how the attachment system does the math. So we learn about all this, and then it just constantly begs the question, why am I like this? What can I do about it? Where does this all come from? Help me escape. Okay? So let's take this idea that the boyfriend or girlfriend shows up and they basically worship you. They put you on a pedestal. They idolize and monitor everything about you. And they're always just like, right here, right present. Hey, do you like this? Do you like that? Oh, you don't like that? We'll never speak of it again. Oh, you like this? You like this kind of chicken pasta? I'm going to make this chicken pasta every day for the next month. You're like, whoa, this is too much. So let's say we've got this kind of dynamic going on. Where else do we see this kind of little relational dynamic playing out? Well, let's back up the clock. And we're going to get to this point where we have a young child that is trying to figure out their way in this world. They're trying to figure out, who am I? What is happening around me? How do I achieve safety? How do I get friends? How do I get approval? How do I stay away from things that are terrifying? And then we've got a parent, and that parent has strong effing opinions about stuff. And it's like, this is the only way to eat chicken pasta. This is the only way to worship God. This is the only way to be this kind of political party. Whatever. These things are right. Those things are not just incorrect, not just factually inaccurate. Those things are so wrong, they are shameful. Those things are profane. Those things are disgusting. Disgust is one of the core kind of emotional responses. So now you have this child that's trying to figure out its way in the world. And it is literally surrounded by big, strong, towering adult creatures that are quick to dysregulate if anything doesn't go their way. And then when those big, strong characters dysregulate, meaning get triggered, get activated, get angry, get ragey, get sad, become emotionally unavailable because they're dealing with their own emotional storm, that's terrifying for a child. So the child says, no, I can't do that. I can't be there. I can't let that happen. Then as soon as that child figures out they have some kind of agency or control over their own behavior patterns that will then lead to this scary parental figure being delightful or sad, delightful or angry, delightful or raging, then that child basically begins saying, oh my God, this is me. I need to take a part in this. I need to make sure that I do these things and I don't do those things. So that might be, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to put on this jersey for whatever freaking sports ball team that dad likes, and then I get dad's approval. And I'm going to make sure that I say terrible, disparaging remarks for someone because, I don't know, they're part of this political party, or they've got blue hair, or they this kind of hobby, or they have this kind of body shape, or this kind of skin color, or that kind of national identity. I mean, who the fuck cares? And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that the children are trained. They are literally trained. We can even say brainwashed. Children are trained to be in an enmeshed state. When a parent is hypercritical or hyper opinionated, especially if they're engaged in black and white thinking, they're literally pre-programming that brain when it has no defense network against it, has no intellectual antibodies, no wisdom, no ability to put these thoughts and opinions and experiences into any kind of organized pattern. And they definitely don't have individuation yet. So it's taking a defenseless brain and literally training it to say, your only path to safety is to become so enmeshed with me. My hobbies become your hobbies. My opinions become your opinions. My friends become your friends. My political alliance becomes your political alliance. My hatred and judgment and condemnation of these people that are different becomes your hatred, judgment, and condemnation of these people that are different. We train it into the children. Why? Because the parents are insecure. And I'm sorry that's rough, but at this point, I kind of don't care. Because it's like this, I was the child in this dynamic. All my brothers were the children in this dynamic. Literally, probably virtually every child in the neighborhood where I grew up was a child in this dynamic. Maybe one or two had healthy parents, but the majority not. And what happened? We can say, oh, they turned out fine, except they didn't. A very large percentage of the children in that area ended up in prison, stealing cars, petty theft, assault, drunk driving, second-degree murder in a couple of cases. This is the outcome of that village and the people that grew up there and the children that grew up in it. That's one of the reasons I'm very opinionated on this stuff, and I'm kind of blunt with the way I deliver the material, is that these situations, the fears of the parents transmit directly into the children. And they oftentimes will curse that child for a great long while, maybe their whole life, maybe just until they have some kind of major breakdown, they hit rock bottom. Sometimes they'll just be in this state of like, I'm unhappy about my life, I want to do something about it. That's many of the people watching this video. And this stuff is real and it's traceable and it's predictable. I mean, something that's been amazing about attachment theory is it's one of the most predictive psychological models I've ever seen, is that you can look at a person and watch the way the relationship is going down in flames. And you can ask a couple of points, get it kind of registered, and then you can say, I can predict with a high likelihood of accuracy that you have these kinds of dynamics happening with your mother or father in this age range. And people will say, how do you know? I mean, you see it here on this channel all the time. You get people in comments who's just like, who is this guy? How are you inside my head? I'm not. I don't know 99% of the people that watch these videos. Never spoken, never had any interaction. But yet I speak of archetypes, and the archetypes are so predictable. I can sit here and say, it works like this, do, and people say, oh my God, that's my life. So what can we do about all this? Well, first, let's get to the root of it. And if we just want to put it simply, it's this. Your nervous system learned that love is conditional. Your nervous system learned that there's something wrong with you unless you perform in this way. Boop, ba-doop, 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 ba-doop. That's the core message that was learned. That's the operating subroutine that's kind of dominating your life. And the problem is, if that list of performances is not in alignment with kind of your real preferences and your real way of interacting with this world, you're going to have a lot of inner friction. But there's also cases where you probably have no clue who you actually are. You have no clue what your real preferences are because you've literally spent your entire life, 20, 30, 40, 60 years, your entire life performing because your system is like, I know what to do here. Why would I put any metabolic energy into figuring out what the hell I think about this? Because if I express what I think, I'm just going to get shot down. I'm just going to get shamed. I'm just going to get beaten. I'm just going to get blah, 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 blah. I'm going to get some list of negative consequences if I were to even express an opinion. So why bother? And you will meet these people Well, hopefully you don't, because I'm really hoping the number of these people is extremely small. But I've met them many times where you get a person who basically is this like shallow, outline of a human being. They're like walking zombies, one foot after the other, frying up one egg after the other, fixing one lunchbox after the other, dressing one child after the other, going to one movie after the other. And if you were to stop for a second and say, who are you? What do you actually prefer? What do you want in this moment? And that person will just be like, they will literally freeze. And it is this full blown system panic that is primarily, first it's a freeze state, then it's usually a flight state. And the flight state will sound like, well, I don't know, or this, that, the other thing, kind of justify not having an example. Or probably the most common one actually is like, well, I don't know, what do you want? What movie would you like to go to tonight? Well, what do you want? What do you like for dinner? What do you want? They answer the question with a question as a way of deflecting any personal accountability. Why? Because they're terrified of being wrong. They're terrified of expressing an opinion and having that opinion be criticized, judged. Because if a person criticizes me or judges me, their opinion is 60,000 times more important than mine. And so if they criticize me because I wanted sushi for dinner instead of pizza, then I will suffer an entire system collapse of shame, guilt, wrongness, badness, unlovability, hopelessness for the future. I'm so messed up, blah, 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 blah. Why? Codependence, this like differentiation that I was talking about earlier in the weight of their opinion versus the weight of my opinion. Until that is brought into balance, I think there's a fair argument to say that everything else is hopeless. And I'm saying this as someone who lived this journey and lived this challenge. I did, the meditations and the yogas and honestly, the TRE aspect of somatic releasing was actually very helpful in this. We can get into that if you want me to. But engage with many, many different cognitive modalities about trying to build my self-confidence, fill myself with positive validation, and where the thing, you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you're like, you're handsome, you're clever, blah, blah, blah. Affirmations. I tried doing affirmations. I did energy work. I did the Reiki and the crystal and psychedelics. Like all these things are basically cognitive interventions for this state of discomfort and low self-worth that I had in my life. And then I would do this in isolation and things would improve, seemingly. But then the moment that person steps into the room, it all goes flat. Again, their opinion, any criticism they have, system collapse. Any energy that they have towards me that's negative, system collapse. Any energy that they would have towards me that was positive became an obsession. I'm just the dancing monkey again. So we have to address this one issue for this whole codependent enmeshment angle. We have to address this difference of opinion value if we're going to make headway in anything else, to basically give us the pathway where we can step away from codependence and enmeshment, where we can be our own person, where we're not desperately clamoring for another person's attention, love, validation, etc., just in order for me to feel good. Maybe don't listen to the people that are peddling the short form content that codependency doesn't matter, that it's natural for you to just want, yes, those things are true, but in balance. And if you're not in balance, if you destabilize when another person is not giving you validation, you are in a dependency dynamic. You are dependent upon something outside being a very specific way in order for you to have any kind of stability, regulation, hope, happiness, whatever on the inside. And it's surprising how many people are still trying to justify that position. I'm not here saying love is not the right answer and we need to be solo individuals and, because the pushback from people that are deep in this mindset is that I want love, I want connection, I want to be enmeshed. It feels good. I want that feeling forever. And how dare you suggest that I shouldn't? How dare you suggest that there's another way or a better way? How dare you suggest that this is unhealthy? It's like, okay, maybe, except let's look at the long-term consequences. And the long-term consequences always trickles down to children in a negative way. Sure, if you have two parents that are madly in love with each other and they look at each other with doe eyes and it's They're all nurturing and caring and all that kind of stuff. That's great. An amazing environment for a child to grow up in. But if you have a parent that basically has a total system collapse the moment that they're not getting approval, validation, constant reinforcement, text message every hour, et cetera, what does that child learn? That child learns system collapses when you're not getting validated is a viable strategy for living this world. They will embody that. They will internalize it, metabolize it, and will become a part of their functioning model for interacting with this world. Because why? Why are they doing that? Why does their system do that? Because one of their most important attachment figures, arguably the most important attachment figure, just showed them this is the answer for that kind of stress. So this child is looking around. Sure, there's other people around. There's other options. Maybe there's another way to living life. But it's like, if mom or dad are doing this, obviously it's super important. And if I want to stay aligned with them, I need to love the same things they do. I need to hate the same things they do. I need to enmesh myself with them so that child passively absorbs this survival mechanism. So dependency dynamics always impact children in a negative way. And if there's anyone's got data to counteract that, please post it. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But until such time as somebody provides that data with a longitudinal, in-depth, high sample size, I'm going with this. And I'm going with this fiercely, which is dependency dynamics have a negative impact on children because they literally model to those children. They teach those young brains how to be codependent, how to be enmeshed, how to have a system collapse, how to be anxious, how to be avoidant. All the things that we're sitting here as adults watching YouTube videos trying to heal, we're literally just force feeding that into the attachment system of a child when we're modeling these behaviors around them. We don't want that. We want a better world. We want a better world for our children. We want a better world for the community and nation and humanity at large. And this is how we get there. How we get there is by making sure that the next generation has it better than we did. Not with money, not with toys, not with status, not with social media likes, that they get it better than we do and that they escape the attachment window feeling fully safe, fully secure, and fully confident in their abilities. That they are able to step out of that attachment window into a world and say, who the hell am I? How do I make this work? How do I find safety? And they're able to achieve those goals without being dependent on another person. And when you have two people that are not dependent on others, they can come together and choose interdependence, which is different. There is enmeshment, there is dependence, there is independence, where I don't need you for nothing. And then there's interdependence, which is I can survive on my own when needed. At the drop of a hat, you have an accident, you have a medical problem, you lose your job. I can step into an independent, grounded, stable role, and I can carry more weight. Emotional burden, physical burden, logistical burden, financial burden. I can carry more the moment that it's needed. And guess what? So can you. You can carry more the moment that it's needed. Now we have two people that have capacity for much, much larger than what they're being asked of right now. So it's like my capacity to carry weight is 60,000. But what I'm doing the burden that I'm carrying right now as we're in an interdependent state is only 400. I'm just picking these numbers out of the air. So my capacity is way up there, but I'm not using it because I'm down here resting. And the reason I'm resting in an interdependent state with my partner is so that we can basically weather any storm. We're going through at a low, our capacity is high, but that we're using is low, so that any unexpected stresses, burdens, surprises, whatever, anything unexpected comes at us, and either one of us can basically step up and say, I got this. You rest for a while. And then you have that capacity, and then you switch places. And you say, hey, partner, I'm up at my limit, and I've been at my limit for a week or a month or a year. I need some rest. If I don't get rest, I'm going to collapse. Partner's like, I got you, bro, sweetie, honey, whatever. I got you. And they step up and they carry a bigger burden. And like, you rest for a while. How much do you need? Give me a week. Give me a week to go hang out with the guys. We're going to go out in the woods and we're going to touch grass and climb trees. She's like, I got this. She carries it. She does not have a system collapse. She does not crash into anxiety. She does not flailing in attachment panic because partner is not there and not giving constant reassurance and validation. I have strength on my own. I am not dependent upon you to hold strong. And then there's children involved. What is children learning? Those children passively absorb what they're around. These children passively absorb mom's strong, dad is strong, they're each strong independently. Then they come together, they're even stronger than the sum of their parts. And then look, big surprise comes. Look at the way they navigate this. Look at the way they're always connected and sharing and vulnerable and engaged in communication and problem solving and presence for one another. It's like, oh my God. And these children are passively absorbing all this whole dynamic. They internalize that. They step out in the world. They do that as adults. We've just made the world a better place. This is the goal. This is what we're trying to do here. And honestly, everything else is secondary, at least in my mind. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to do here. And in my mind, everything else is secondary. Everything else is something we do in service of this one end goal, which is to create parents that are so ideal that they can create this field of beautiful attachment growth so that those children can escape that window with a golden ticket. Because if we can do that, I guarantee you, we will create a better tomorrow for everybody, not just them. I hope that makes sense. Thank you all for listening, and peace.